Yeah, that's really not.
Come down, you know, the main it took me out.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the LLR Combined Fire Authority. As usual, this meeting is being recorded and will be broadcast live on YouTube, and as well as being recorded for the meeting. The link will be available on this website. Some of you will probably notice my voice, so I'll try and probably appeal to most of you, but I'll try and hold it together for the next couple of hours. Can you please ensure that all mobile phones are switched off or to silent, even despite some of the amazing ringtones we've had earlier this morning. So apologies for absence. Received apologies from Mr. Piper, Councillor Osman, Mr. Miller, Mr. Grimley, Mr. McDonald, Mr. McDonald and Mrs. Taylor, and Councillor Darby substituting this morning, and Councillor Halford. Okay. Item number 2, to receive declarations of interest in respect of anything on the agenda. Does anybody have any hint to declare? No. Okay, item number 3, to advise of any other items that the chair has decided to take as urgent. We received an email at 8 p.m. on Monday from Harry Brandt from the FBU, so I've decided to take that as an urgent item. Now, I appreciate that the email hasn't been widely circulated, but what we will do is we'll be sending the email out along with the written answers after this meeting. Now, what I'm proposing is that, Harry, if I invite you to address the TFA, and then if I could get a verbal comment from yourself, Chief, that's great.
Chair, members, my name is Harry Brandt. I'm a firefighter control serving for Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service for just over 5.5 years, and I'm the Brigade Secretary for the Leicestershire Fire Brigade Union, representing 444 members across the service, including the vast majority of Grey Book members of staff. I'm speaking today on behalf of the Brigade Committee of Leicestershire Fire Brigade Union, representing opposition to item 9, financial pressures. Fire Brigade Union is against any further cuts to frontline services in the fire and rescue sector countrywide. Locally, we've been hit with severe cuts in numbers and resources since 2010, and only a small victory in defeating the illegal day crewing plus shift system is the only time we've seen any increase in the establishment figures in the last 15 years. The number of whole-time equivalent firefighters in Leicestershire has fallen from over 750 in 2010 to under 500 in 2024, as per Home Office statistics. It is time to say enough is enough. Proposed cuts in isolation could be perceived as minor or fairly small. When coupled together with what has come before, it's simply the tip of the iceberg. It is noted within item 9 that extensive staff engagement and meaningful engagement with representative bodies has taken place. The Brigade Chair and I have met the Chief and the ACOs on 2 occasions, once prior to the staff engagement sessions and once following those sessions to see what the finalised plan was. The Chief, in communication with staff ahead of the engagement sessions, encouraged cost-saving ideas to be put onto the services portal on a dedicated page. This gave the impression to staff that they are being listened to and taken seriously. But every cut within the list in the paper was a senior leadership team idea prior to any engagement with ourselves or the wider workforce, which renders any engagement meaningless when the outcomes were already predetermined by the Chief and senior leadership. Our question would be, were any of these proposed cuts the result of direct staff engagement? It's well publicised that incidents are increasing. Further to that, the threat of climate change is causing more wildfires in the dry, hotter summers and widespread flooding in the warmer, wetter winters. And this is an emerging threat. In the major incident of January the 6th, 2025, where there was widespread spate conditions flooding, the service was stretched to near breaking point. On the recent bank holiday Monday in August, the service were dealing with a fire incident requiring 8 fire engines. There was another instance across the county too, and at one point the service had one fire engine available for further emergency calls. Further to that, there was a lack of officers available too. This represents a significant risk in safe systems of work. In fact, the chief himself was mobilised to a road traffic collision on the A42 for scene safety and operational assurance of crews. This duty is normally undertaken by a station manager 4 ranks below the chief, but there were no station managers available due to how busy the service was that day. These examples may seem stark, but they can no longer be considered one-offs. They are an increasing threat. We feel that cutting establishment figures at this time is dangerous to our members and members of the public. The removal of tactical response vehicles in the crewing model of riding 2 on an appliance is something that the Fire Brigades Union should be celebrating. My predecessors have sat in this very chair and have addressed this very authority with our reservations and concerns about these vehicles and the crew model within it. However, a reduction in the weight of fire cover and a further decrease in our operational resilience should be opposed at all costs. We cannot be in favour of a reduction of 5 persons from our establishment. The service is in a place where business as usual appliances, both whole-time crewed and retained duty crewed, are unavailable due to a lack of crew on more or less a daily basis. And I'm also led to believe that the current establishment is lower than what these proposed cuts will inflict. We are currently being propped up by overtime and supply shifts being undertaken by normally retained firefighters. This is clearly an untenable situation. We're calling for the CFA to oppose inflicting these frontline cuts within the paper and challenging the Chief Fire Officer on some aspects of the decision making that sits within his remit. Some of the cuts within the paper are very sensible and easily enacted, stopping paying people broadband allowances for working at home, removing funding from senior leadership team away days, not paying someone to wash tea towels when there's a washing machine on every station, and not paying £70 for a single workweek jumper. All no-brainers as far as we're concerned. But when you drill down into some of the other cuts, such as reducing the establishment of station manager posts due to the direct entry scheme, yes, it's a sensible cut, but you have to question why it is even needed. The experiment was a vanity project of the National Fire Chiefs Council, which was completely unfunded at a time when SLT were warning staff and managers that we will need to be tightening our belts. 2 years later, now here we are. The FBU were against this scheme from the outset, and we still have some reservations about the safety aspects around the scheme. And if you allow me the liberty, Chair, I'll pull a figure from item 10, updates on reserves and borrowing. Currently, the general reserve sits at 3.187 million, which is 5.9% of net yearly expenditure. Whilst there is no legal figure around what this figure should look like, guidance sets the figure at 5%. If that figure was reduced to the guidance mark, it could release almost £500,000 to be used within the budget this year, whilst cuts are postponed at the very least. The questions we have are, in light of what we have advised here, does the CFA feel frontline cuts are the right thing to do? Will the CFA consider authorising a reduction of the general reserve to allow the postponements of cuts and in full due diligence and lobbying of central government for a resolution to the funding crisis in the sector? We're not alone in Leicestershire. The National Fire Chiefs Council have advised countrywide up to 2,300 firefighter jobs will be lost in this latest raft of cuts. We're calling for the CFA, the service, other governance models nationally to join the FB, lobby central government, make funding for fire and rescue services fairer. We need to join together to demand investment. Linked to funding, resources and reserves is the Bilson Training and Development Project. Within the note submitted today, there is some more details, and I urge you all to read those comments. But whilst thinking about funding, it'll be remiss not to discuss the significant cost of this project and question its viability in the current financial circumstances. The need for training facilities is still urgent and required, but is there a more efficient path to achieve this? And if I may, Chair, I'll now talk about the service redesign proposed within item 9, and I'll link that with the ongoing cultural issues. The FB are questioning whether the SLT are the right group to commission this project. We fear that it's being commissioned will give carte blanche to SLT to propose further dangerous cuts. Phrases within this aspect of the paper, such as identifying efficiencies, modernising roles, agile, resilient and leaner, are raising alarm with the FBU. Time and again, these phrases are simply corporate jargon that will equate to more cuts. I've stated a couple of times today the reduction in firefighting numbers within Leicestershire since 2010, 750 down to under 500. Meanwhile, the number of grey and gold book staff that sit within SLT has remained the same since 2011. I believe that there's an increased number of green book staff within the SLT too. So at a minimum, from these numbers, the same number of SLT are managing a workforce that is 34% smaller. We have a top-heavy structure, so we do welcome any restructure that will be inclusive of SLT, because it should be. Within His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services report into Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service covering the period 2023 to 2025, the culture of SLT was highlighted as a huge issue. This was also picked up and highlighted in a staff survey conducted by a watch manager from Eastern Fire Station, who was challenged by Assistant Chief Officer Weston to show what problems there are within the service. The report was conducted independently from SLT and the rep bodies. However, to date, little has changed since either report landed. Issues that the FBU have been raising in various guises, including our monthly staff consultation forum, are yet to be addressed or dealt with. The issues at the moment are around promotions and transfers, the sheer number of people in temporary promotional positions in middle time management, the culture of fear, numerous policies and procedures being out of date, and an emerging concern around the levels of sickness absent currently in the service. The industrial relations between the service and the FBU feel to have somewhat of a piecemeal approach to it at the moment. Since before I joined the service, my predecessors have been attempting to negotiate a meaningful facility time agreement, and for the 2 years I've been in post as Brigade Secretary, this has also been unsuccessful. When I undertook negotiations with Assistant Chief Officer Weston in January 2024, we made good progress, and we got to a position where we had an offer of a procedure that will probably have been accepted. It was a broad improvement on the existing procedure, which was never agreed by the FBU. However, this offer was fully withdrawn, negotiations stalled, and a new procedure imposed recently without agreement. However, this is yet to appear on the service's SharePoint site, and quite honestly, I don't know where this sits. Playing facilities time is a key foundation of the industrial relationship. Without meaningful facility time, the relationship will always be unbalanced. We rely on favours to attend meetings. We feel we are forever walking on eggshells to not have more taken away from us if we upset the apple cart. There is a lack of flexibility for officials to undertake union duties in education. We officials fully understand that large portions of our own time will be taken up by union activities. However, prioritising which duties should be undertaken should not be happening. We feel this tactic is deliberate to hamstring our influence and restrict our scrutiny. A specific example of the retaliatory response from the Chief recently was around our leave procedure negotiations. The Assistant Chief Officer Weston and I have again been negotiating on this since February 2024. We made meaningful progress getting from version 2 to version 2.7 through negotiation, which, other than an issue around fairness for a couple of stations that ironically wouldn't have been a problem if these cuts had removed the TRVs, progress then stalled following the staff review, and a working group was set up, which the FBU had a seat on. We have been promised a version 2.8 for a while, and if what was verbally promised within it was produced, I would have thought it would have been accepted by committee, but it was never produced in writing. In light of this, and in the spirit of an open and transparent industrial relations, we advised the Chief and the Assistant Chief that the Brigade Committee had agreed to a social media campaign which would aim to improve funding for Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service. Part of this was a warning and form to communities when their fire engines were not available, a key tactic to build public support. The Chief responded to this, and I quote from an email, "This of course poses additional problems and friction for the more flexible approach to leave that we were progressing. I am sure you will see how the two issues work against each other and are directly opposed. Therefore, I'll instruct that work to pause until I return from my leave and we can discuss." And to date, these discussions have still not taken place. We do have good relations with some managers, including some within SLT, and when obvious wrongs are brought to us by members and they're brought forward to the service do work hard to rectify those issues. However, when the issues that directly challenge the strategic direction of SLT are brought forward, they are met with hostility and the theoretical drawbridge is pulled up. I will hold my hands up as a new official. I did make some mistakes in my approach when not allowing advanced sight of issues brought to CFA, such as the FBU CRMP response to the CFA from December 2023 and to question CFA on principal officer pay in February 2025. We're demanding that this balance is readdressed and we are given a full opportunity to engage SLT and middle management in all consultation.
Ask you to start wrapping up. You've had 2 minutes now.
Okay, I'll wrap up. Thank you, Chair. What we want to do is does the service have a plan to solve the cultural issues highlighted by the HMI report? And finally, Chair, I would like to place on record our thanks for the attendance of yourself and the Vice Chair to the Red Plaque event at Shepshed Fire Station on Sunday, 21st of September, that honoured our former member, Mick Bird. The ceremony was significant and historic, and I am sure yourself and the Vice Chair could recognise the importance of the occasion and the positive impact it had on the community and the firefighters of Shepshed. The FBU, however, were disappointed that no member of SLT represented the service at this event, despite invites being sent in good time. And I would also like to highlight the service allocated £200 for refreshments for attending the event. Again, disappointing there, just days before the event, this was halved. These two actions left a somewhat sour taste on what was otherwise a huge success. Does the CFA agree with the FBU that more regard should have been shown for this event by SLT? And our final point, Chair, if I may, we feel that allowing SLT to commission and action a service redesign where all manner of changes and thoughts will be on the table is akin to allowing SLT to mark their own homework. And we urge caution with this approach and request a full, meaningful engagement and negotiations in this if it progresses. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you very much, Harry. Just before I hand over to the Chief to counter some of those points. So we're quite a new CFA, and I don't think any of us around this table want to see any cuts to the service whatsoever. So what I've actually asked is all the group leaders to co-sign a letter to me with central government. I would very much appreciate it if the rest of the CFA could also sign that letter as well, just to show the financial position that we're in, because it's not going to get any better unless the government actually give us some more funding as well. Chief, that's to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Obviously, the questions came in, or the FBU comments came in relatively late, so I haven't been able to produce a full written response for you yet, but wanted to provide some verbal update. And some of the ethos of the comments I actually agree with. It's not a pleasant place for us to be looking at cuts within the service. I would greatly support any increase in funding, but I can't ignore my duty and statutory responsibility to provide a balanced budget for the Combined Fire Authority. Therefore, until we receive that funding, we have to consider all options that are on the table. I also agree a very useful staff engagement survey was conducted by an individual that provided us some great feedback that, ironically, we've now enacted and are now being criticised in some elements of the FBU's points for. So that staff engagement survey requested a change in tack of engagement, much more meaningful engagement, face-to-face with members of staff at smaller events rather than trying to get 70, 80 staff together. And that is exactly what we've done, both for the outcomes of His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services report, HMI CRFS, and indeed the approach we've taken to these financial pressures we're facing. So we did 10 face-to-face sessions with staff and 2 online sessions with staff, asking them for their thoughts and suggestions of where we could save money. As an SLT, we had met previous to that, as you'd expect us to do as a responsible management board, to consider areas for savings. But how many of those were preordained to come into effect? 0. How many of those suggested by staff overlapped with what SLT suggestions with? Almost all of them. And in fact, there are a few more that we hadn't considered that we are looking at progressing now. So did we engage with staff in a meaningful way? Absolutely. Did we meet with the Fire Brigade Union and other representative bodies in advance? Yes. And I also agree with Harry's statements around the number of meetings, but Harry didn't quite mention all the other communications via email and sites of documents that have been shared in addition. Equally, all of those sessions were open for Fire Brigade Union members, other trade union representatives and staff to engage. They were held on daytimes and evenings to engage with all of our staff on all of our duty systems. And there were over 200 people of the service that engaged in those face-to-face sessions. And the SharePoint list, or the staff suggestion scheme, was open for a period of 6 weeks, where I don't have the exact number, but I do know it was over 100 suggestions were put forward by our staff. Each and every one of those was considered. And yesterday, on conclusion of the second round of staff engagement visits, another 10 face-to-face visits and 1 online event, the response to each one of those individual suggestions is being published. I would suggest that's meaningful engagement. I would suggest that's exactly what staff asked us to do as part of the staff engagement survey, and that is what we've done. We have got quite a lot of feedback, anecdotally, admittedly, around the maturity and the difficulty and sensitivity of this topic, but the way we've engaged with it has been robust and meaningful. The difficult situation we face is cuts do need to be made. Do I or any of the senior leadership team want to make cuts? No, I would much rather we had investment in the sector, and we have very different conversations around where we can invest into the future of our service for our community, but we are not in that reality, and unfortunately we have to have these conversations. Ultimately, do the CFA want to consider postponing these cuts? That is a decision for you as members. I only advise you as the chief officer in the SLT team. All I would say is if we do delay, the overspend will increase, because as of July this year, we are overspending every month with the increases that come in. So that is entirely within your purview, and I will conduct any decision that you make as a fire authority. With regards to some of the other matters not related to the financial pressure, certainly the consultation and negotiation in the trade union facilities, yes, those conversations have been going for a large number of time. I think it's slightly, I'd like to report some fact that the previous agreement allowed 60 hours per year. The current agreement allows up to 226 hours. That's very close to a 400% increase. And not included within those times are the unlimited time for health and safety, quality, diversity, inclusion activities, and representation of members who need that. So we feel that is suitable and sufficient to incorporate the union's needs. I accept it doesn't meet the union's wants. I do genuinely accept that. We are not in a position to be able to grant any further time off, simply because of the consequences it then has around filling with overtime and standby moves, etc. So we need to live in a real world where we look at the size of our organisation and what we can commit to that. I think consultation negotiation is a two-way street. We have offered quite a lot of compromise within this. It's not as much as the union would want, I accept that, but we do have to draw the line somewhere, and clearly everything we give, it does start to have another consequence around overtime and backfilling, which the union have quite rightly highlighted we have quite a lot of. So Mr. Brandt covered my quote from the email that I give, and I do stand by that. Ultimately, they wanted greater flexibility in leave. We were looking and working productively through that. The social media campaign then highlighted the need for crewing on appliances. Therefore, we aren't able to offer both the flexibility and the crewing appliances. We have to take a broader view. What I would say is I did ask to meet with Harry about it. He's been very accommodating. It's my diary hasn't prevented that meeting to go ahead. That's on me. I accept that. That's fair. But ultimately, we have to balance what we're doing as an organisation. We aren't able to give the union everything they want, despite our potential willingness to do so. We have to consider the impact on our community and the organisation. With regards to the Red Plaque event, I was scheduled to attend that. I had accepted the meeting invite. There is quite a lot of fairness in everything Harry said. On the day I wasn't able to attend because of a domestic emergency at home that needed my attention. This was above and beyond my normal working hours, as SLT commit probably 55, 60 hours plus per week for evenings and weekends events. We simply can't go to all of them. Had I wished to be able to be there? Absolutely. Unfortunately, my personal life did get in the way on that occasion. And I don't make any apology for that, because I do have a family and a household to look after in my own right as well. With regards to the refreshments, clearly it's disappointing, I accept, but we're in financial difficulty. We can't simply write £200 off for refreshments. This was an FBU event arranged and supported by the FBU, supported by the service. The FBU could have considered covering those costs themselves as well, as we are in financial pressures. So I will give a more fuller response if you will, Chair, with given a bit of time to compose it. But I think there are some mixed messages in there, and it would be very good to understand the union's agenda in this, to kind of understand if it's about financial pressures or if it's about terms and conditions of members. And sometimes those two things don't fit together. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chief. I'm not going to take questions on this, because obviously I think members do need to actually read the questions in full. So what I'll propose is that
Can I say something?
we're going to cover this in item 9.
Okay.
So what I'll ask is that the questions and the answers are circulated to all the members later on. The reason I'm not going to take questions on this is most of it relates to item number 9 on the agenda, so we'll have an opportunity to discuss on that as well. On to item number 5 then, public participation, CFA rules procedure number 9. The questions, no questions have been received. Item number 6, first we need to confirm the minutes of the meeting of the Combined Fire Authority held on the 13th of August. These are on pages 5 to 12 of your agenda bag. I move that these minutes are correct. Can I have a second, please?
Yeah.
Okay, item number 7. We now consider the minutes of the Corporate Governance Committee meeting held on the 23rd of July. These are on pages 13 to 22 of your agenda pack, and I will move that these minutes are noted. Anybody second? Okay, so item number 8, the first main agenda item today is the financial monitoring quarter of 2025. This is on pages 23 to 33 of the agenda pack. Sarah Slater, Head of Corporate Finance, will present this report.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is the Q1 budget monitoring report, and it represents our financial position as at the end of June 2025. The CFA are asked to note the revenue, budget and capital forecast position, and we are also asking for approval of the capital slippage from 25 of 1.6 million to be brought forward into 25-26, and also an additional capital items totaling 421k. This brings the capital budget in 25-26 from 11.5 million to 14.1 million. The annual budget was approved at 54.1 million, and currently, as we stand at Q1 at the end of June, the overspend is a forecast of £1 million. The reasons for this £1 million overspend currently is that we have higher pay awards than budgeted. So the budgeted pay awards were 2%, and the actual pay awards for both operational staff and admin staff was 3.2%. There's the impact of the NI increase, which was not fully funded by the government. Initially, the funding was thought to be higher, but the reality was about 50%. We have higher than anticipated agency costs due to vacancies and not being able to fill specialist roles. And some of the non-paid budgets have been forecast at the spend for 24-25 because it's too early in the year to have more of an idea of what they're going to come in at the end of the year. Finance team are working really closely with budget holders to review budgets, which supports all the recent communication and engagement sessions with regards to efficiencies and savings. Table 1 in the report shows the Q1 forecast by area. So as you can see, and I said, employee costs, we are overspending due to the pay award and the NI increase. Supplies and services has got quite a significant overspend at the moment. These relate to equipment, clothing, professional fees, and ICT costs. They're the main areas, smaller areas, but they are actually offset by a contingency that was built into budget for inflation. These will be monitored for the rest of the year really closely. With regards to capital, the CFA approved 11.5 million budget at the beginning of the year, which included £7 million for the Learning Development Facility. Following the end of the 24-25 financial year, slippage of 1.6 was identified and an additional cost of 421. These are shown on Appendix 2, 3 and 4 in the pack. The increase in the capital programme then sets at Q1 up to 14.1 million now, and Appendix 3 shows the changes. Out of the capital, the current spend is quite low at the moment. This is mainly due to with it being Q1 and a few other reasons. So with regards to fleet, £2 million spend earmarked for appliances, and small appliances is on hold pending the small appliance review. With the estates, the southern refurbishment will commence in Q2, so costs will start to hit then. And the facilities are awaiting planning permission, so very little costs are happening there. With equipment, there was a review and reapproval of some of the projects and some changes which delayed spend, but this should pick up in the later quarters. As with revenue, work is ongoing with each of the area leads to monitor and review programme through the year. To note, since the CGC, SLT have also approved the use of an underspend on the Wigston RAC project for 200k to be allocated to the workshop to refit the workshop out in line with the contaminant project that happened to make that facility fit for purpose. And then finally, to bring to your attention, Appendix 1, which is the capital programme over the MTFP period. Appendix 2 is the detailed slippage. Appendix 3 is the revised programme. And Appendix 4 is the detailed additions. And unless there's any questions, I have nothing further on that report.
Very much. Is there any questions from the floor? Mr. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I've looked at it. Now you're in a really tight position, and I think the obligation upon the chief and officers to comply and have their balanced budget is a legal requirement. So, you know, we're faced with difficult decisions, both as a body here today, but equally the officers have this legal requirement to produce its balanced budget. And I've read the document and met with the chief, and I'm convinced they're doing everything they can to sort of bring this to a situation that is both meaningful and practical. When you're under enormous pressure, you have to do things within your realms and sensible. And I think from my discussion, I felt that it is urgent. We have to do things. From my point of view, I would support. I thought the trade union presenter was first class. He really put his case hard and forceful to us, and I congratulate him on that. But the reality is business has to have budgets and we have to comply with it. We have to be careful how we go about it. We're just not in a position to be able to sprinkle gold dust on everybody and everything. So, Mr. Chairman, I support this document. And I think it's important for us to be mindful that the business needs to have this action. It's not one they're thinking, well, let's do this for the sake of it. They're doing it because of necessity.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison. We are slipping slightly there into item 9, but this is obviously about the capital slip. Mrs. Page.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. And in general, I haven't got any issues, but I've just got a general question, if I may, because we are talking, being a new member, we're talking about property, etc. And one of the things I have noticed while we're talking about spending and property cuts in item 9, it is the monitoring of electricity and heating cost. Where does that fall in? And I'll tell you for why. Whenever I used to go near a fire station, the light and the heat would hit me. And I understand it is so the diesel engines don't freeze up, but we don't have a cold winter anymore. So is there a possibility to look at that? Is it being looked at? Because turning down heating by 1 degree could make a considerable saving. So just talk me around that, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sarah?
Yes, is the simple answer. Energy prices have gone up and continue to go up and are only likely to continue to go up. And we are looking at multiple strands. So we are in the estate strategy looking at replacing lighting to more efficient LED. Admittedly, most of the estate has been done with that now, so the savings will be limited. Heating costs, some human behaviour aspects to it as well. Sometimes I don't blame staff necessarily, that it's the circumstances we operate in. We sometimes seem to heat the drill yard a little bit by leaving bay doors open, etc., etc. But we are also exploring the grant funding for installation of solar and other grants for heat source pumps. So yes, we're looking at that. We're looking to try and get most of that funded through grant funding rather than our own capital expenditure. And unfortunately, some of those windows are closed to obtain some of those grants at the moment. So we're looking to do that, and we will try to become much more energy efficient in the way that our buildings are managed and utilised through automation and human behaviour.
But is the cost reflected somewhere in the monitoring of the budget? Because it must be quite horrific.
Yes, and some of our buildings, and I'll specifically say Central Fire Station in Leicester City, is a very ineffective building because of its age and its listed characteristics. So we have very limited options of what we can do with that because we can't replace the windows, for example. So through our regular budget monitoring, we do manage or look at every building's energy performance. And to be fair to you, some of those costs are eye-watering.
Thank you, Chair. You've actually stolen a little bit of my thunder there because I was going to mention something very, very similar. I've been taking it upon myself to go and visit quite a number of your stations and speak to the staff. And one that I went to in particular yesterday, the rental cost of the building is 22,000. However, the electricity cost is 60,000, which is obviously an obscene amount of money, and that's only likely to go up despite what government are saying about bringing energy costs down. That particular building, whilst I appreciate that it is a rental building, so you would have to negotiate with landlords and everything else, it's a huge flat roofed building, very similar to the Birstall station as well. It lends itself fantastically well to solar panels that could not only electricity, but could also become an income source because of the nature and the size of the building's roofs. So I'm really pleased to hear that you are looking into that. And hopefully we can get some grants from government to make that feasible so that we haven't got the capital outlay. Just on government, obviously I noted that you mentioned, Sarah, about the national insurance contribution was only covered by 50%. I would assume then that the national minimum wage going up at every tier as well has contributed to that factor as well. So do we know?
Yes, sorry, Chair. The NI was a bit of a twofold change because it was an increase, a percentage increase, but it was also a change in the bandings. So that created sort of a double fold increase.
Okay. So it has obviously made a considerable amount of increase due to that one political decision.
Significantly, yeah.
So,
Can I just ask about the capital budget? Obviously, I've noticed what you're paying in payment of loans and stuff. How is the capital budget being funded at the moment?
So at the moment, the capital is funded by reserves. So there is an element of the reserves there that is earmarked for capital projects, and that is funding it. And then there are elements in the revenue budget under capital financing each year that contribute towards that.
There's no plan to sort of borrow.
There's no borrowing at the moment, no.
When was the last time that you borrowed?
I can't answer that because I wasn't here, but looking at it, it was quite a few years ago. I come from another fire service, so predominantly nobody's really borrowed in the last few years, long-term borrowed because the rates have been quite high.
I just wonder about the learning and development scheme you're doing. Obviously, that's a huge amount of capital project. Can you just give me a little bit of information about what that is and what it's going to look like when it's?
I will defer that to the team on that one.
Thank you. So clearly, as an operational fire service, we need to train and use the exposure and experience to our staff. So the Learning and Development Centre for me is a crucial investment for the sector. Our training facilities at the moment have been end of life, and we are quite weak in that area. And I do really think it's an area we need to invest in. So through quite an extensive project over a number of years, we have a preferred site at Bilston, which is a county council property at the moment. We've got a heads of terms agreement for purchase of that, and the price is fixed, subject to planning permission. We are now expecting to hear about planning permission at a Harborough District Council meeting, Harborough planning meeting on the 2nd of December. So that's moving forward. In the event we get that planning permission, that will be to buy the 4.2 acre site and develop it into an operational training facility with a number of different components. Basically carbonaceous fire, so live fires with wood, ultimately, so we can expose new recruits to various stages of firefighting, but then also maintain our firefighters' competence over the years with more advanced techniques. So there's various different buildings on there. I suppose the one most of note is a 5-storey brick-built training centre or steel-built training centre with various different kind of levels of firefighting in it, but can also simulate high-rise firefighting as a significant risk for Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland. It's probably the snapshot I'll give you there, if that's okay.
Yeah, no.
thank you, Chief.
Is it?
The last one.
Last one. Obviously, the site that you're using now will obviously be sold and go towards funding that at all. Is there any government funding for training facilities that we're or local?
Sorry, it's a bit of a complicated answer. So at the moment on the Loughborough site, we have our Loughborough fire station. We are not proposing in moving or changing that in any way, shape or form. On the side of it is a learning and development centre, which is probably about half an acre, if that. A very peculiar shaped land. We would look to dispose of that asset once we've got the new learning and development facility. Unlikely to bring significant funding in, if I'm honest. But as part of that, we would also move Bilston Fire Station to the new site and sell the Bilston site as well. Again, limited capital receipt, but it would all come in to the funds, yes.
Okay, so if I have no further questions, I move that A, the revenue budget and capital programme forecast position at the end of June 2025 be noted. B, capital slippage of 1.646 million be brought forward from the previous years. And additional capital bids for the year of 0.421 million, increasing capital programme budget for 25-26 through from 11.556 million to 14.13 million to be approved. Do I have a seconder? Mr. Harrison. And is everybody in agreement? Okay, item number 9, thoughts on financial pressures. This is on pages 33 to 40 of your agenda pack. Chief Fire Rescue Officer, Howard Bailey, present.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, there's going to be a bit of duplication here in previous conversations, but I think for full transparency of information, I'll go through it if that's okay with you. Members will recall from previous meetings and communications that the service is facing some significant financial pressures. This is not from any single event, it's from a number of compounding factors that are all added up and creating the pressure. So we as an authority have always had a very historically low council tax precept, and year-on-year caps have meant we've never really been able to close that gap. Grants last year were frozen and only a 1.8% inflation was applied to those grants when inflation was running nearer to 2.5%. Pay awards across the board for all employees came in at 3.2%, which was higher than the sector was anticipating. Inflation's been running at well above 3% for a consistent period of time now. The addition of national insurance employers costs, which was not fully funded by government, placed quite a big burden on us. And general running costs and contract renewals for the service are at a very high level. We were waiting in hope that the comprehensive spending review would announce some good news for the fire sector. Unfortunately, it did not. There is some still elements of that potentially outstanding around potential one-off capital investment for buildings. We won't really hear about that until much before the Christmas window closes. So we've got some hope for that. Again, until we see that, we have to kind of continue to plan ahead. This has resulted in a £1 million per year or year-on-year budget deficit. I will asterisk that £1 million mark as we've kind of come to that figure based on the assumption we will spend those earmarked reserves on the things that they're tasked for. So until we spend those reserves, the £1 million mark is much nearer the £500,000 mark. But obviously we want to build a sustainable organisation for the future. So we are aiming for the £1 million a year. And whilst we hold those reserves, there will still be some interest payments coming into the account, which means we can have a little bit more time to consider what's going on. So since the issue was raised with the Combined Fire Authority, my team and I have conducted an extensive programme of staff engagement across the service. The purpose of this was twofold: to communicate with our staff in smaller groups, as per the request of our staff from the staff engagement survey, and providing them the background, the history, the knowledge and understanding in an attempt to be as transparent as we can be with all of our staff across the organisation. And the second twofold reason was to engage with staff and seek their thoughts and suggestions on where we could make financial efficiencies across the service. This was initially achieved through 12 engagement sessions, 10 were face-to-face, 2 were virtual. This was done, as I've mentioned already, varying times, varying locations across the service to engage with as many of our staff as we possibly could do. In addition to that, written communications were added to our electronic internal kind of intranet, which we call the portal. One of those team sessions was also recorded and published on the portal, so staff who weren't able to attend any of those 12 sessions could see what went on and what we're looking to achieve. That was also supplemented by a staff suggestion portal article, which generated over 100 suggested items. Separate briefings occurred with trade unions. These were done in advance of the sessions, with materials being shared with the intent of open, honest and proactive engagement, and in the interest of that no surprise culture, which Harry openly talked about earlier. Following this extensive engagement that saw us directly speak with over 200 members of the service, my team and I reviewed all of the suggestions from the sessions and the suggestion list and have compiled it into the list of efficiencies contained within your pack at paragraph 10, spread over pages 34 and 35 of your bundle. Following the list being created, another series of engagement events were delivered. 9 of these were face-to-face and 1 of these was virtual. Again, the virtual one has been recorded, hasn't yet been published. It was only undertaken yesterday, but we wanted to get those sessions delivered so staff knew what was coming prior to us discussing the Combined Fire Authority meeting today. Again, we wanted to be open and honest with staff as much as we could be, and also provide them the opportunity to speak and liaise with you if they chose to do so. The focus on this round of engagement was kind of to let staff know what's been considered and feedback what we were taking forward, so they knew what decisions to be made and when. Subject to that, every one of those 100+ staff suggestion scheme will receive written feedback, which I'm led to believe will be published later today. Following conclusion of the second round of engagement, staff suggestion list will be republished with the individual feedback. And as you will see on the list on pages 34 and 35 of your bundle, most items sit within my authority for progression under the LA scheme of authorities, with exception of one notable exclusion. Obviously, I haven't progressed many of those. In fact, I've only progressed one, which is the change of jumper supply to date, because I wanted CFA to have the opportunity to discuss it and had your influence and guidance onto me prior to enacting. The one that's excluded is probably the biggest decision and arguably the most impactful decision, and that is the suggested removal of the tactical response vehicles at Loughborough Fire Station and Western Fire Station, and then the uplifting of crewing at Castle Donington Fire Station to 1212 self-rostering. That would see a net reduction of 8 posts removed from the establishment and 2 vehicles potentially removed from the establishment, which is where the savings are derived from. As I'm sure my union colleague quite rightly pressed, there is an impact. This would be a reduction in service delivery, which is why it's a Combined Fire Authority decision. It would be an alteration to the Community Risk Management Plan, CRMP, and would require an element of public consultation for the areas affected, specifically Loughborough and western area of the city. So for clarity, this paper, if approved by the Fire Authority, would only be seeking approval to commence the public engagement. It's not a request to remove those appliances right here, right now, but clearly it does provide the lion's share of the savings identified. So if it's not this option, we would then have to consider what other options it would be. And some of those options are very difficult, even for me to propose as a Chief Fire Officer. So it's my view and the view of the senior leadership team that these are the least impactful options, both in terms of impact for the community, but also the impact on our staff, which is a significant factor for us to consider. So secondly, to the table which proposes the circa £800,000 of savings, members will see in paragraph 19, there are a number of other work areas that we want to explore. Most of these are new suggestions that have come from the staff engagement sessions. They require some due diligence to be done, a bit more information to be gathered, or potential contract alterations. We're not going to be able to enact them relatively quickly, because we may need to negotiate changes to contracts with external suppliers, etc. That's not to say we aren't looking to bring them into being. They're just going to require a bit more work, and we're not completely sure of the levels of savings. So we'll have to bring those back to you at a later date. But it is envisaged these will all produce some form of savings somewhere through the form. So we're getting much closer to the £1 million mark that we're looking for. Lastly, in paragraph 20, you'll see the service redesign project that I'm proposing to commence. That will review the organisational structure. The objectives and scope are detailed within the paper. Clearly, that's quite a large piece of work, and I would envisage that project lasting between 12 and 24 months to make sure we encompass all people's feelings, views, and build a structure for the service that's fit for now and for the future, rather than a reactive service that's kind of grown out of historic changes here, there, and wherever. I do note the union's concern around some of the wording in that. Around it may cause some disharmony or discontent within the workforce. I've only used that terminology to be open, honest and transparent with people, that we are looking at changing the service structure, seeking to find efficiencies, but potentially modernising a number of legacy roles within the service. I have said on record, I am confident we can do this without redundancies. I reiterate that confidence, but it is fair to say some jobs may change, job descriptions may change, and that may see some people choose not to stick with the organisation. I do that in nothing more than openness and honesty, but we are the structure I've inherited feels very stick in plaster and evolved over time, and I'm not necessarily sure we'd build the organisation in that way if we had the opportunity now. And before finishing, I just want to correct one error within the report. Keen-eyed amongst you will notice in paragraph 21, there is a slightly different figure than what is at the bottom of the table. The figure should read estimated saving of 808,718. The figure disparity has come because that was an earlier draft of the report, and we subsequently estimated those savings down rather than up. But that's a clerical error on my behalf. Please accept my apologies. I'm sure members will have questions, which I'll happily take and listen to the discussion. But I'll finish by concluding, whilst a reduction in service is undesirable, we find ourselves in a financial situation with the legalities of producing a balanced budget where I'm afraid difficult decisions need to be made. If it isn't these decisions, it will need to be other decisions that are equally, or if not more difficult and palatable for community impact and staff impact. I will stop there, Chair, and
Thank you very much, Chief. Yeah, it's as I alluded to earlier, it's not something any of us want to do, is to make cuts. And I think we need to stress that. But and I do thank you for your work, particularly around the committal to non-redundancies as well. First up, I have Mr. Darby. So welcome to the CFA. Thank you for substituting. No questions, sir.
Thank you, Chair. You expect to make these savings in this financial year?
Subject to CFA approval, commence the process. If the CFA were to approve the recommendation to begin public consultation, that would take a minimum period of 8 weeks. Then we need to get the feedback from the consultation and present that back to you as CFA to make a decision. So that one I would envisage not occurring until January at the earliest, possibly February. It may not even be able to come into force until April. So that one will take a little bit longer. The other elements of it, I would look to begin to commencing almost immediately.
That was the reason for asking the question about timescales with consultations and the redundancies, etc. It's a tall order.
So there wouldn't be redundancies as part of any of this. Reduction in staffing levels could be achieved through natural wastage, and we are, as my union colleague quite rightly pointed out, already running slightly under establishment. So we wouldn't need any redundancies as part of what I'm proposing today. And I'm confident that the full programme, even with service redesign, we would be able to achieve without redundancies.
Yeah, thank you. I've been involved with quite a few national discussions as well over this with the Fire Commission, which was last Friday, which I represent the CFA on. I'm also on the Fire Services Committee, which is a new body which can make representations to governments. One of the things that the group that I'm in on fire service is that we want to have equality or parity with police funding. We've seen the police get an extra, I think, 14,000 officers, whereas we're losing people within the fire services nationally. It's not just a local issue, it's a national one, but it's affecting us first because we are the lowest funded. And these are things that I'm raising awareness with other people on fire authorities across the country. Other things that we could have is we don't currently get capital funding. We don't get funding for the floods that we've been taking part in. The wildfires through climate change have put additional pressures on, and people are having to support each other, like our own firefighters. Some of them had to go to Dorset recently to help with wildfires there. When we lose jobs through natural wastage, often those jobs are gone forever. It's not just a temporary fix. It becomes even harder then to rebuild the establishment. And if we do recruit more people, you're still talking about a 3-year delay before they become fully trained and able to contribute fully to the service. Other issues that we face, not just locally, but especially around here, are the increased housing targets. So the number of people that we serve is increasing at the same time. We currently have not been tapping into perhaps the community infrastructure levy, the 106 funds, which again might be an additional source of funding if we were able to lobby effectively for that. And for me as a representative of Leicester City, the Western Fire Station is something which is quite dear to me because it's my own patch. And it seems to be somewhere where every time there's an issue, it's Western that is first to be discussed. And I know the reasons for that, but it just doesn't look good for local people who need to have that confidence that we are supporting them as best we can and to make them feel safe especially with the numbers of people that we are serving increasing. So we're hoping to both lobby government, the new Fire Minister, talk to MPs, but we also need to make sure that the public are aware of the situation that we're facing. So we need a combined publicity campaign. And I hope that we can do that jointly with, as the CFA, as the office, the leadership, and also with the firefighters themselves to get that message over. And I thank the FBU for the report that they've given, and also for the chief and the leadership and the other officers that are making us aware of the reality that we're facing. And I hope that you'll support us on the representations that we will be making, not just on behalf of us, but on our communities to government to try and do something about the situation that we're in, because fire seems to have been left out or forgotten.
Did you want to come back on?
I agree.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, before I ask a question on the report, thank you very much for the report. It does make sense. However, on the basis of Councillor Barton's speech, I cannot agree anymore, and I wonder whether through you we can add to this recommendation that we consider having a letter written to government, pointing all of those things out and being proactive on this matter, because you know how I feel about Section 106, you know how I feel about everything else. So I think it is time that as the fire authority, we start to thump the table rather than always falling behind. Coming from an authority that has been constantly underfunded over the years, and having lobbied for over 20 years, I do not hold my breath, but that does not mean that we do not have to be loud and verbal, because at the end of the day, everybody needs the fire authority, and we are very beholden to the fire people across the board. So if I may, I would like to propose that we do.
We have actually, that's what we covered in item 3 when we said we were going to do.
Well, fine. So then I go to the report. In order, and I know Callum, you raised that, in order for clarification, I do note the gentleman's speech, but as you pointed out, we're actually just covering items on page 34 under number 10. Those are the cuts. Now, I know the concern was raised in regards of point 19 and 20, page 36 and 37, but you did give assurance that a report will come back on that in due time once that has been established. Yes, I see a note there. So we have got then, and you know, I can't even say how much I support the items listed under number 10, because I wash your tea towels for £8,000 a year, you know, quite happy to do that. I've lost my train of thought now, being flippant. Oh, yes. So I was just wondering, in the previous item we voted through on page 30, appendix 2, cost item 1657, there are £250,000 for kitchen and canteen allocated. And I was wondering why there isn't a saving introduced to that, because if we're talking that kitchen and canteen, it's perfectly well and it's wonderful. So, you know, just talk me through, because we're short of money. And that hasn't even started yet it isn't in the savings. But I support the report.
Can I just add a bit to that before you ask me my same sort of point? Just querying the first one, the removal of the coffee provision. Obviously, several of us have got coffees around this morning. You're estimating a £500 saving a year. That must be the cheapest coffee machine in the world.
Yes. Oh, yes.
The one that we rent at my establishment is in the thousands. So £500 doesn't seem like an awful lot.
It's an initial estimate of a minimum saving that I can definitely say it will achieve. It may well run higher. Some of these may run higher, some of them may run lower. It's that estimated saving. I don't think it will take us to the £1 million mark. I'll be honest with you on that, but every little helps without being flippant around that. You know, we've got to look at common sense areas, and we've tried to do that.
I'm not denying at all, we should take it out. That's it.
Oh, and I've got one more point. Sorry, before. Okay, so I've noted that, hang on, the last point, reduced funding allocation for awards and recognition event. Now, I am really, really keen that firefighters are awarded and recognised for all of the jobs they're doing. And in order, we know there have to be budget cuts. We are fully aware that these things have to happen. But I do think to keep the morale for, the whole force, awards and recognitions to me are really, really important. So is this £10,000 cutting it out altogether, or cutting it back and getting sponsorship? Because if it would mean cutting it out altogether, I wouldn't be very happy, because I think firefighters need recognition and a bit of an ESOP, because after all, they do a great job. So thank you.
So if we talk about the canteen first, and I will hand over to Sarah shortly to kind of take you through the detail of that. This building was opened in circa 2010. It was designed and built prior to austerity coming in. I led to believe it opened very much almost on the day that austerity landed. And it was designed with the canteen and mess facility there. And it was actually staffed, I'm led to believe, and there was a proper cooking facility. Obviously, as austerity bit, that facility was removed. And at the moment, it's used for people to have lunch and kind of an informal breakout area. The money was allocated by the CFA quite a few years ago now, and I don't have the exact figure, to kind of convert that into office space or potentially meeting rooms, with the idea of then potentially renting out further space to generate an income. As COVID then hit, the need for office space has kind of removed. And to be truthful with you, we've kind of kicked that element down the road, as we don't think it's a viable investment to change it into offices that then won't be used. So we've kind of left the money just sitting there. It's in the capital programme. We've got no plans currently to enact it. I wouldn't be adverse to altering it, removing it and redistributing the money elsewhere. Sarah.
So at the moment, the slippage came in from last year, and a lot of this 1.6 million I've been working through with the team and the leads of all the capital areas. It is only Q1 at the moment, so we're trying to do a bit more of a deep dive for Q2. But the chief is right, that money technically is not a project anymore. Some of that money may be vied to a little bit of work that might be needed for a secondary control in this building. We are deciding where the secondary control will sit, whether it will sit downstairs or there is some space at the back of the kitchen. So at the moment, that's not a project. So some of these aren't potentially projects yet. They are earmarked money. And they've come from a previous capital programme. So we're doing a lot of work working through those and making sure we're only doing what we need to do, what's fit for purpose, and rescheduling. So I would hazard a guess that money will either be wired to something more that we need to do, or it will come back as a saving on the capital programme.
I may come back. So that then means that if it would be reallocated, you would be very much on, schedule with your savings. Because if you add 250 or 200 to your 800,000,
For year one, yes, but obviously it's a one-off figure, so we'd still have to look to address the root cause of the deficit.
every little helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And in regards with rewards and recognition, I couldn't agree more. We probably don't even do enough to recognise our staff and their immense achievements over the years. We have, for the last 3 or 4 years now, been running quite a very nice awards evening at Leicester City Football Club. We have funded most of that through corporate sponsorship with contract holders and partners. And we have topped that up with CFA money to the tune of circa £10,000 a year. That's the bit I would look to remove. So the CFA don't put anything for it. We will still look to aggressively seek sponsorship from corporate partners, but it will probably mean the event and venue will have to change. So we're still looking to hold a rewards recognition event, but it probably won't be as palatial surroundings as Leicester City Football Club anymore. We'll have to kind of cut the cloth accordingly, but I would be keen to maintain that. Interestingly, staff have suggested maybe going to every other year rather than every year. That's a staff suggestion that we're looking at and considering as we're looking at all of those, just to kind of allow a bit more of a time to pass for some of the excellent work we get recognised and embed. But again, we'll look at it, but we want to continue. It just won't be as nice as it has been.
I'm very pleased to hear that. Thank you. And I know most of the cost would be hiring the venue. I'm sure there are other venues. I think it is absolutely paramount that those recognitions will continue. Thank you for that, Alan. Thank you.
Two more. Let's.
Thank you. I can't remember your name, sorry.
Rosita.
No, not you, sorry, the gentleman behind. Sorry. Sorry. And you, Rosita. Fantastic hearing from you. As new on here, I thought it was really, really helpful hearing from you, and I would have liked to have read it and digested it a bit more, and because that was the first I heard about it, and I've got a background in workforce development, so you raised some really interesting questions there that for me sets alarm bells off about the culture of this organisation. And I know you touched upon it a couple of meetings ago, didn't you? And some of it has come out in surveys, but I think there's a huge issue there that's going to, if you're not careful, people are going to take that next step in stride and have all of those bigger issues. And I think what concerns me on here, and again, there was a lot in there, so I couldn't highlight and pick it out. So apologies if I misunderstood, but you were saying that you suggested things that equally haven't been taken forward. And I know on here, there's some items that have got estimated savings, like, for example, the coffee. But then you've just alluded to that is really estimated as in plucked from the air. But then we've got also other suggestions that seem really reasonable, the ones about cleaning duties, uniform costs, whatever, that hasn't got any item, cost attached to it. And it just seems odd that some things seem to have been picked up and run with. And in light of what Harry was saying, makes me think why that is. And other things haven't been picked up and haven't got a cost, not even a sort of out the air type of cost. And so I would really like more detail and more awareness of all of those items that have come from the staff, and just all of them to have a picked out the air number. So at least then I feel like I've got all the information. Where it really concerns me, I've got a background in the NHS where we are stripped down in workforce, and it happens all the time. We're currently going through something at the moment. So I absolutely get where you're coming from. And I think when we're looking at potentially losing posts, even though it's not redundancies, it is bodies on the ground. And I think, I can't remember if it was you who said about, to get them back then. And we can write our letter, but in the council, we wrote a letter the other day, didn't we? We had it signed by literally the doorman, wasn't it? It wasn't even a member of parliament who replied back. So the likelihood, as much as I'd love to think we've got a receptive government, but the likelihood is we won't get anywhere. I'm really concerned with that bit that's in bold, really concerned, especially in light of what Harry said, especially in light of actually it's removing posts, especially in light of the fact we're already posts down. And I think we need to try and do anything in our power to keep the establishment number exactly where it needs to be.
Could I respond there?
Yeah, do.
Yeah. So, for example, you highlight the uniform around us moving to one uniform across the service. So I can't point anyone out because we haven't got anyone here in the blue uniform. Ultimately, the blue uniform is marginally cheaper than wearing the white shirts, etc., that we've got. But the real cost would be in disestablishing this and establishing the uniform for all the officers. So actually, it might not produce a saving in year 1 or year 2. Now, I haven't got the detailed costs to provide you, hence why I haven't offered a potential how much it would save, because I don't know the honest answer. And I think me giving you, a saving that actually might cost more in year 1 and year 2 might be something that the CFA doesn't consider doing for a little period of time until we see something else. Equally, that I'll look at the ones in paragraph 19, your extended response life to 15 years. I can tell you the capital savings of what that will be immediately. What I can't yet tell you is what the increased maintenance cost would be for the extra 3 years we run the vehicles. So I haven't shared those estimated figures with you because they're quite misleading at the moment until we do more due diligence. I felt that would be unhelpful to you rather than helpful. if that's something you'd like to see, I can get that produced for you relatively quickly.
I would like to see a list of everything that was suggested and then some.
Oh, I can give you that as soon as we
Yeah,
this afternoon.
you know, just to give because I think the other thing that I would like to see on there that isn't on there is subscriptions. And that was alluded to at a meeting before where I think it was £48,000. Now, I know what flags it to me is that you're paying £8,000 for tea towels. So if you're paying £8,000 for tea towels, therefore, are you also funding the CIPD professional bodies and various other professional bodies for your employees? And if that is the case, I've worked in, public and private sector where actually it's been the responsibility of the employee to pay for those because you can have it offset against tax and things. So there's other things in there as well that I'd like to see, like the subscriptions. And so that would be helpful.
The other thing I'd say is the one in bold concerns you, it concerns me as well. I don't make that recommendation lightly, but it does save the lion's share of the savings. We are a lean, effective organisation that unfortunately pays, I say unfortunately, our bills or our budget, 74% of that is in staff. So it leaves very little fat to be trimmed elsewhere other than staff. I don't propose removing fire engines lightly at all. In fact, I'd much rather not be here. If we choose not to progress with that, then I'll have to bring an array back for the CFA of where else we can save the money. And ultimately, I don't say it flippantly or threateningly, that probably is removal of a fire engine from the city or a downgrading of a station to find that level of money. So whilst I accept it's not a nice decision and we should be keen to avoid it, I can't bring you many other recommendations that don't involve frontline reductions or staff losses elsewhere. Sorry, I wish it was a different answer. That's the reality of the situation that we're in.
Just before I bring Mrs. Taylor in, I want to carry on with that whole process as well. Again, speaking to your staff recently, there are an awful lot of procurement items that potentially we're paying way too much for. So I think this needs to be a very fluid document where we're looking at things like that. And I'll highlight one that was alluded to. It was £250 to clean gutters at my 7,000 square foot unit. Similar square foot unit that you have, £4,000. That's a huge difference. And if that's across the board, then we really do need to be nailing down on these smaller things, using different contractors and looking for better procurement. One of the other things that I know I've spoke to you about is the number of group managers' fleet cars that we have as well. Maybe that can be looked at. These are all significant items that would save the authority a lot of money. And certainly with the TRVs, I know when we brought them in a few years back, I was subbing on this panel then. By the firefighters themselves, they're not overly keen on them, purely not because the machine's not good. It really is. It's a great vehicle, but it's the fact that there's two bodies in it rather than four. And a lot of firefighters that I've spoken to don't like that. There's a significant risk to their personal safety as well as what their ability to be able to save life on site.
Say that.
No.
If it's okay, Chair, I'll ask Sarah to respond to the procurement question and then I'll cover the other bits off.
Procurement at the moment, we've got an interim procurement manager because at the moment the structure is there is no procurement staff. So the procurement has been done solely in individual departments. There are a lot of contracts that are potentially out of date. There is a lot of procurement work to do, and we do have an interim manager who is trying to work through all that list. It's a lot of work for one person, but we are working through that. With regards to cleaning, that is quite an interesting one because at the moment we do have a contract with and I don't know if it's the city or the council that does the cleaning. County. Sorry, I'm still getting used to the so that's a bigger issue, a bigger thing, a piece of work we need to look at because we are under contract with the county for that. Things like subscriptions we are looking at. So I've been in since the middle of July, but Colette, my predecessor, had started some work on budget monitoring. So at the moment, the team are working really closely with budget holders. So some of the savings, the simple savings, like looking at the subscriptions, looking at allowances, things like that will become everyday monitoring work with budget holders and the finance team. So we will gradually get to that, but once you see the list of the 100 suggestions with all the responses and who's responsible, it's a lot of work for small teams to start looking at. So we'll have to chip away at some of that, and some of it will take longer because there'll be some implications, like Callum alluded to, with if we keep vehicles longer, the cost then could be the increased maintenance. So we need to review the fleet and the numbers. There could be terms and conditions in some people's jobs that they are provided cars. So then that becomes a bigger implication and issue. So there's a lot of work to do, but as well as that, as business as usual for monitoring, we are looking at areas, for instance, like subscriptions and things like that. There are some big subscriptions in the fire. Just because that's the nature of the fire service. But yeah, so my team are really working closely with budget holders and monitors. So that will chip away and we will report that through the budget monitoring reports because that will be business as usual for my team.
Mrs. Taylor.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that, and it's good to see that you're looking at lots of different options that have been put forward. So thank you for the call, and thank you for Harry as well. I think that was really useful, sitting on here for the very first time to be in that as well. One of my questions was, what other options have you considered? And I think you just raised that about using a fire engine and stuff like that. So, none of those are very palatable at all, aren't they, let alone what's in this report as well. Just picking up on one point that Harry said about being top heavy with SLT. Just your view on that. Do you agree with that?
I don't agree with that. And in fact, I've got a piece of paper here produced this morning. In 1st of April 2012, senior leadership team had 11 members of various different makeups. As we sit here today, the substantive structure has 8 members. That's a 27% reduction. So I think all parts of the organisation have shared pain as evenly as possible. I would suggest the workload has gone up since 2012. Across the board, to be fair, not only with the senior leadership team, but we have lost members of staff at all levels in the organisation. I hope I've stressed it enough in the paper. The service redesign project would also look at SLT structure own members as well. My gut feel is there probably is a different way of doing it that might be more efficient. But as Harry quite rightly highlighted as well, we weren't also able to attend every event that people wanted us to do. So there is a fine balance. And if I may just come back, Chair, around numbers of cars, again, on the face of it, yes, that would save money, and it probably would. But then we also lose operational resilience. And as Harry quite rightly highlighted a couple of weekends ago, we were stretched to the maximum that required us to recall officers from home. The fact they had their cars there and their fire kit there meant they were able to support the organisation immediately. So yes, there is some potential financial savings, but there is some disadvantage to it, and that's the bit that we need to do some more due diligence around. Frequency that occurs, it's not a high frequency, but the impact is significant. That's why some of those pieces are in the follow-on paragraph 19 that we need to do work on to fully understand them.
Just to come back, I think you're doing lots and lots that we need to do to look at the budget, but obviously this decision today is just going out for consultation, not actually making a decision. So for me, that's sort of a good way to move forward, is to go out for consultation and continue all that other work that you're doing as well.
Deepak.
Best part about going last.
Not quite.
Oh, you're summing up, Chair. So obviously great representation. This is what this is all about: scrutinising and making sure that we take action and we sort of like compromise on things that we need to as well at times for the benefit of our employees, because that's what makes us stronger. Somebody who's been part of CFA for very many years, I remember the food being served in the canteen, and you'd come in and refreshments and everything has gone, because over the last decade or so, we've literally had money taken away from it, and we've not had any money at all. I think there was a letter that was sent out, Chair, correct, where you would know, to the Minister asking for some support for CFA. Because did we get a response for that at all? Because there is a letter that went out from the CFA signed by all the members. We've not had a response from.
When was that?
This was about a year ago.
So there's been a series of letters that have gone from Mr. Rushton asking for greater funding, consultation feedback responses around fair funding and asking for those sorts of things. And again, in January this year, we also wrote to the Fire Minister with reference to floodings we attended and seeking additional funding. But if I may paraphrase, thanks for the letter. See you soon.
Yeah, obviously this is,
On the terms,
this is a new CFA, so I think it's now the time to.
yeah, Chair, so, you know, obviously, I know we're writing letters to the Minister, but or condemn what's been happening to the CFA here. You know, especially when we're trying to provide a first-class service here, you know, with the state-of-the-art training centre, you know, nationally, but yet that funding is not getting to us. So we need to stress the case and in strong terms, get that letter, maybe just share it with all the committee, CFA members before it's sent out, just in case somebody needs amending or something or adding.
It's not just us, it's. a
Yes,
national thing, isn't it?
exactly. I know it's a national thing, but then, you know, but we've been underfunded for a long time now. You know, I remember the times, like I say, we were over at County Hall. You know, it was a lot more better being over there than here we have the whole team under one roof. Over there we had different things, but we had refreshments there. We carried on the layout here to say this will be like exactly how often is this premises are used for conferences or meeting rooms. Because initially, that's what we thought that we should be doing. We should be generating incomes from that. But I haven't seen many. I have attended here any conferences at all. So maybe perhaps looking into our marketing team if they're doing something right or wrong. But yeah, Chair, I just totally agree with being the last speaker with everything, and thank you to Harry for the representation he's made, and obviously yourself. You've you know, if there are ways to find some sort of funding, we'll find a way to make sure that it doesn't affect our workforce, you know, and working with them, because I was under the impression that they've asked for some more meetings and it's not been, they haven't.
Yeah, that's correct. I've recently been away on leave and Harry informed me of the social media campaign whilst I was on leave. So I responded to Harry and say, yeah, I'll arrange a meeting when I got back. I got back last week. And I haven't been able to find time in my diary to meet with him yet through a number of other commitments with Local Resilience Forum, which I also chair, and various other national pieces of work. So yes, he has requested a meeting and I haven't yet facilitated that, and that's my fault, not his.
So just to summarise what I just said there, basically what I'm proposing is that we also sign a letter as the CFA to the government minister. In addition to that as well, I think we need to get MPs on board, Leicestershire MPs. So obviously currently we've got Labour, Conservative and one Independent. So perhaps you and I could both write a letter to those and go cross party on that.
Me to do that.
Fantastic.
Sarah, if I may add to that, we are working with the MPs. I've met with, I think, six of them previously, and one of them has agreed to sponsor a meeting down at Westminster. So we're just trying to get a date in the diary when they can all attend. My proposal is that yourself as chair, me as chief, Harry as the secretary for FBU, and Unison representative to talk to them in the collective. What I haven't got yet is the dates, which is the bit we're struggling to achieve with them.
No problem.
Useful events. As well.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, just to finally put my point on this as well, we're being asked to save £1 million. We've identified what 800, circa 800,000. There is an easy way to save between £1.5 and £2 million overnight. And this is again come from direct conversations with firefighters, and that is to overturn the incredibly unpopular decision amongst firefighters to get rid of the DCP, so the Day-Crew Plus. Now, I appreciate that the FBU, and I've got no desire to go to war with the FBU on this, but the FBU do not represent all the firefighters. There are many firefighters that I've spoken to that have left the FBU over this decision. Day-Crew Plus was incredibly popular. It provided great morale to the teams because this is all voluntary. Remember, nobody's being forced to do DCP.
Are you able to explain what that is?
So the Day-Crew Plus. Do you want to go?
Yeah. So the traditional model of crewing a fire engine on a whole-time basis is you have 4 watches, 4 shifts basically, and that provides 24/7 cover across 365 days of the year. Very good system, stood the test of time, was developed in the 70s, and is still good today with a few tweaks. That generally means to cover one seat on a fire engine, you need between 5 and 6 people, so it's quite costly. The day crew plus duty system was a different duty system outside of nationally agreed terms and conditions, where you need less than half the amount of people to do that. And it means they traditionally worked a 12-hour day at the fire station. They then they stayed on the station for another 12 hours throughout the night, not doing productive work, but available for operational response. If they then were mobilised during the night, they had some further downtime during the next day to kind of recap that. And within Leicestershire, you could do up to 4 or 5 shifts together. So you could potentially live at the station for 5 days continuously, and it drastically reduced the cost of running a fire station. To support people in doing that, they each received an additional payment on their salary, which was 27%. So it was good for staff, good for the organisation. However, it did require, it doesn't conform to the work time regulations. There was a legal case mounted in South Yorkshire where the shift system was deemed to be outside of the work time directive, therefore illegal, unless you could enter into a collective agreement to sign your way out of that. Through legal advice, the only body or only representative body that covers the firefighter to watch manager roles, which encompasses is the Fire Brigades Union. The Fire Brigades Union, within national position, are opposed to day crewing plus. Therefore, as the South Yorkshire ruling kind of flooded through, we were approached by the Health and Safety Executive. What are we doing about it? Unfortunately, we weren't able to reach agreement with the Fire Brigades Union, and I'm led to believe we probably still won't be able to. Although I can have that conversation again if that's the desire of the CFA. So ultimately, we had to come away from the day crew plus duty system, which, as Harry alluded to, saw us increase the establishment circa 40, 50 people, as well as the establishment increase in the recruitment. The training implications were significant, etc., etc. So we ultimately came away from it as a service. Yes, it was incredibly effective and efficient, but it comes with quite a lot of risks.
It does. I mean, I was talking to firefighters yesterday and they turned around to me and said, well, what's happened since then is that the firefighters now getting second jobs. So they're still effectively working outside their working hours with the fire service. So it's not changed actually anything on that. However, you know, you've got firefighters that travel in from long distances as well. So one particular individual travelled a number of miles to do his duty. He then goes off duty, has to find something to do in the meantime, and then comes back on the next day and then goes home 3 or 4 days later on that shift pattern. It just makes no sense whatsoever. And the potential savings that we could make would just totally wipe out this £1 million problem anyway, without any further cuts whatsoever. I totally appreciate that the FBU are going down the legal route. That was decided a number of years ago. And I do think that this authority now has an obligation to reconsider this and perhaps go back looking at the legal route to see if we can't challenge the FBU on this decision. Because as I said, you've got at least one station that I know that will waive the 90 days and go straight back into DCP tomorrow because they've already left the FBU. So the FBU does not represent all the firefighters at the station.
You're correct, and I'm happy to do so. Because it's national terms and conditions, it has to go through the National Joint Committee, the NJC, which the only recognised body for representing firefighters, crew managers and watch managers at the level is the Fire Brigades Union, which is where the legal advice kind of led us to. I'm happy to have those discussions and report back, or potentially even have a joint meeting with an appointee from the CFA and the Fire Brigades Union to have that discussion. It would solve the problem, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think it was something like 7,000 a year, just on memory, the figure, and it was brilliant. And when we came to this decision, sadly, there was that many letters and emails I received. These people saying, "Look, this is fantastic, and that money is good," and all sorts. And it was just so bad to see somebody coming here from, I don't know where he came from, the trade union official. And I just said, you know, we've provided more money for members and they want it. Anything we could do to resurrect that, I mean, I would support that 100%. It was good for us, good for the staff. So what's wrong with it?
Okay, so on that basis, I'll move from the floor then that we do instigate those inquiries.
I'll second that. Thank you.
All those in agreement? Okay, if there's no further discussion then on item number 9, I move that the contents of table 1 in the report and the actions taken by the rescue officer under delegated authority to make financial savings be noted. The commencement of public consultation regarding the potential alteration of the fire cover, the removal of the tactical response vehicles from the Loughborough and Weston fire stations, and the alteration of the crewing model at Castle Donington fire station be approved. A seconder, please. Harrison. All those in agreement? And against? Against, and we've got 2 abstentions. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item number 10. Next, we have an update on the reserves and borrowing. This is back to Sarah, I believe.
Yeah, this report is not a normal report. It was the request of the last meeting where questions were raised regarding both the reserves and the loans. The CFA are asked to note the categories of reserves held and to review the options for loan repayment, but to approve the continuing under the current Treasury management strategy. So I'll take the reserves element first. The question was about what is the difference between usable and unusable reserves. So most organisations will hold those two categories. The usable reserves, of which ours are currently at 20.6 million, they're there to support operational and strategic priorities. They are usually split between the general fund and earmark reserves. Table 1 shows the individual reserves held, and Appendix A gives details of what those reserves are for. The general fund, which is normally your rainy day money, is currently at 5.9% of our net revenue expenditure. SITFA don't stipulate a minimum, but they give their guidance in the Prudential Code, which is what we work under, suggests a guidance of around 5%, and we are currently at 5.9. Now we could reduce that to 5%. However, at the moment we are budgeting and forecasting for £1 million overspend this year, and if we do overspend this year, the money has to come from somewhere. So the £500,000 that potentially is in that general fund could end up having to be used short term to fund the overspend. So we have to be very careful around that one. The earmark reserves, they are there usually to support medium-term planning and usually for financial pressures. Some of them are based on risk and pressures. Sometimes some of them are linked with specific grants. So we may get a specific grant. This may not be spent within that current year, so it hits a reserve and it's there and it's earmarked for specific reasons. So that's your usable reserves. The unusable reserves currently stand at a negative 296 million, which is a little bit scary, but the reality is that they are usually, and they are non-spendable. They are accounting and technical compliance reserves. They're there. There's the revaluation reserve, which is part of the statement of accounts. It's a part of the transactions and accounting technicalities that we have to do regarding our fixed assets. You have the pension reserve, which is predominantly what the unusable reserve is, and the capital adjustment account. They're all technical and accounting compliance. So that is the bit on reserves. So then going to the loans, currently the debt is slightly lower to the statement of accounts. At the moment it's 10 million. That's because we've repaid a £2 million loan this year. All the loans are held with the Public Works Loan Board, PWLB, which most authorities use. All are fixed term, all have fixed interest, and the average interest rate overall is 4.8%. There is a table, apologies, there is a table. It's table 3. Table 3 shows the total of the loans outstanding, the maturity, and the rates there. The maturity spans between 2025 and 2059, and at the moment the annual interest that comes out of revenue built into the capital financing budget is 393,000. That is reducing in line with repayments. Table 4 shows the loan repayment profile. So you can see that between 25 and 2059, the amounts that we have to repay. The CFA operates under the SITFA Prudential Code, and the Treasury Management Strategy is reviewed annually, which does include a borrowing and investment strategy. We also engage with advisors, Treasury Management Advisors, which is MUFG, which is formerly Link. The question that they posed by the last CFA was regard to whether we should repay those £10 million loans with the reserves that we've got built up. There are advantages. Yes, if we paid the loans back, we would have a reduction in interest payments, which would generate a small revenue saving. However, early repayment of loans will attract penalty fees, and unfortunately the timeline between the last CFA and this one and the number of loans and trying to get that information from PWLB, I haven't been able to get the penalty fees exactly, but you will have that offset the savings. Also, if we repaid them, it would be a reduction in our reserves, which means then a reduction in our investment income, so that would then generate a revenue pressure. It also would affect our liquidity and the risk for future obligations. A lot of the reserves are held for capital. So as we start spending on those capital projects, we will need to pay those bills. So to pay those bills, we're using the money that we've got. If we didn't, then we would end up in a position where we might have to take short-term loans to be able to fund our cash flow forecasts. So given the current financial environment and uncertainty, and also we're still trying to embed treasury management in the team because that came in-house last year, I would recommend delaying that decision at the moment. We do review the treasury management strategy annually. It comes to the CFA for approval. There is a borrowing strategy and an investment strategy in there, so we can review this decision every year when we do the treasury management strategy. And in addition, I'm just waiting for some dates, but I'm proposing to try to schedule some treasury management training for both the CFA, the SLT, and also members of the treasury management team in finance. So that then that will support better decision making in the future moving forward as well.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? As usual. Okay. So I move that the categories of reserves held be noted. B, the option for continuing under the current treasury management strategy. Ruth, may I have a second, please? And all those in favour? Okay, on to item number 11. We now move to the LFRS Estate Strategy 25 to 29. And this is on pages 49 to 62 of the agenda. It's back to you, Sam.
Sorry about that. It's me again. So the purpose of the report is to seek approval for the 2025 to 2029 estate strategy. For endorsement of the financial forecast and capital investment programme and continued collaboration with partners to improve estates efficiency and effectiveness. The strategy itself outlines the plan to modernise, maintain and improve our services estates assets. Sorry, there's a lot of S's today and that's work. Focusing on sustainability, legislative compliance, operational efficiency and employee wellbeing. It does include some investment and it's guided by the external conditions survey that was carried out, and we carry these out 5-yearly to assess the state of our estate. It's also aligned to the CRMP and supported by the medium-term financial plan. The strategy itself includes capital improvements, which are to ensure we meet changing health and safety requirements, reducing our ongoing maintenance and repairs, and also keeping our estate on purpose. It includes a net zero direction of travel. We have had the Carbon Trust Partnership review, and some of the works that are included in this strategy and the condition survey are focused on building our estate and other improvements in this area. It's looking at an improved estates management systems, which will improve effective reporting and asset management tracking. Collaboration where it's effective and mutually beneficial, and also in regards to contract management and performance managing to ensure that we are spending our money, achieving value for money, and to ensuring that we have effective technology in place where we need it as part of the estate strategy. Page 8 and 9 shows the financial forecast for each of those years. And then other than that, I wasn't going to go into any more detail on the strategy unless there's any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions on item number 11?
Just looking at this, we can see the considerable amounts of expenditure.
would we save anything just by slightly delaying it, by getting more interest on that amount of money?
Not all of the money will be in place at the moment. So for future years' capital budget, some of that money will come out of the revenue contributions to the capital reserve. So in some ways, the money's not for the later years is not there in place yet. Some of the work is being delayed anyway, and I'll come back to Callum on that. But some of the work that was alluded to relating to sustainability, the impact of that could be revenue savings. So sort of it's twofold really.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of important. I think a lot of these works have already been delayed. If we look at Eastern and Western, their major refurbs have kind of been delayed for years and years, and we're getting to the point where it's essential. Southern, the big spend for this financial year is in exactly the same position. We need to spend it now. What we are finding with estates work is the more you delay it, the more you actually pay in the long run, both in terms of the repairs that are needed, but also the cost of those repairs then becomes a bit of a snowball. So we could, for some of them, I'm not sure it's great play at the moment. I could be right, I could be wrong.
Anything else from the floor? No? Okay. So I move that the LFRS Estate Strategy 24-29 be approved. B, the financial forecast and capital investment programme be endorsed. And C, the continued collaboration with partners to improve estate efficiency and effectiveness be supported. Now a seconder, please. Anyone? And all those in favour? Okay, on to item number 12. This is a report on fire false alarms. This is on pages 63 to 66 of the agenda. Ben B, Area Manager.
Hello, good morning. Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks for the opportunity as well to be able to present to you what we're doing around tackling the issue of fire false alarms in the community. Automatic fire alarms, when properly installed and maintained, are vital for early warning signs of fire. As you'll see in paragraph 5 on the report, shows that our 3-year trend data shows we are seeing an increasing number of fire false alarms, i.e. when we arrive, there's no fire when we turn up. Over the past 3 years, these fire false alarms are made up around a third of the incidents that we attend. The service uses a range of tools to address this, including a process called call challenging. Call challenge is when an automatic fire alarm is received into the control centre, the control room operator contacts the premises and asks them to investigate and understand if there is any sign of fire before mobilising to investigate. This approach is highly effective. Thanks to call challenging, 63% of those automatic fire alarms coming into control are successfully challenged and not attended, helping us keep our resources available for real emergencies. As a result, our rate of fire false alarm attendances is 36%, which is significantly lower than the national average of 42.3%. This shows that our approach is working well with the community. It is also important to note that a number of premises we do not call challenge at. These are premises where life risk is present. These include domestic premises, residential care homes, hospitals and hotels at night. This therefore does form part of that total figure of the incidents we do attend where we don't do the call challenging. Each of those fire false alarms we do attend, they divert our crews from essential activities we'd rather than be doing. These are either genuine emergencies or looking at the community safety work that we do or risk visits at premises around the county. That's why our approach really is working with the partnership of the responsible person that is managing the premises and our fire protection teams. The fire protection team will actively engage with business owners and those responsible persons and offer practical advice and guidance to try to help to reduce those unwanted fire signals. When a premises has repeated activations, we will record exactly which detector and which area that has gone off with, and that allows us to tailor that guidance to specific activities. Most responsible persons are keen to work with us and make the necessary improvements required. It's only when repeated engagement fails, there is no improvement after clear action plans or enforcement activity takes place, we start to look at further steps. In rare cases, typically after at least 9 false alarms in a year, we may introduce cost recovery for our attendants as allowed by law, as you'll see in paragraph 16 and 19. This is always the last resort, and our aim is to support and not penalise local businesses. Ultimately, our goal is to reduce unnecessary call-outs and keep our community safe and ensure our resources are available for real emergencies. Thank you as the CFA for that continued support in improving and ensuring a safer Leicestershire. Is there any questions relating to the report or clarity?
Could just ask one of those is, do we have many repeat offenders? Particular businesses are.
It is a small number of premises that we get, and invariably it's the ones that are engaging that we see that drop off and reduction. On occasions, there are a number of responsible persons that don't take and don't heed the advice and guidance. What we generally find is that they can start to form into sort of complete packages that might lead to further enforcement. And you'll remember previously a paper around prosecution activity. And in those circumstances, it may be that a judge at a court could award costs, including for the unwanted fire signals that we've been attending. So that's where we probably wrap up.
I don't know if you can answer this, but are we talking more public or private sector on those?
Yeah, be more private sector. Normally the public sector will include those life risks such as hospitals, which we work closely with, and as a result, they are keen to try to reduce the impact to other premises. So generally, commercial premises is the sort of area we'll see some non-compliance.
Did you say that there'd be 9 in a year before you'd sort of take any further action?
So initially 5 is the first trigger. So at 5 in that rolling year, we'll start to do some activities. At 9 that we'll start to consider, okay, we're trying to engage, we're doing this further support and we're still not getting the message through. So 5 is that first trigger to sort of start to say, okay, what are we doing about this premises? And we start to work both with the station, the district manager at the station and the fire protection team and that responsible person.
Can I just check, is that quite high, 5? Would there be to look to review that it intervene earlier rather than, I just wondered the cost of doing that and would it be reasonable or not? Because 5 seems quite a lot for me if it's a private business.
So the initial engagement that you have in that first 1 to 5 sort of calls will be from the initial incident commander. And those incident commanders will talk to the individuals about potential practices. So an example might be you've got a smoke detector near to a process that releases steam or smoke as you're doing it. The incident commander will discuss with those to say, you could change that out for a heat detector or you might want to consider this process. It's where that repeated offensive or coming into 5 and above that actually probably needs that enhanced engagement there. So generally, hence what I'm doing the low figure, is that the initial engagement with incident commanders and the call challenging we've got to control solves most issues. However, we do need a deterrent at some point when you get to somebody that's not listening. And that's one of our aspects we'd like to include.
Apologies if it's already in there, but you talk about charging. How much is it that you charge?
Yeah, so it depends on the appliance. So at this point, we're saying one appliance. That's circa sort of £350. So we've got a cost for each individual employee that attends, and then the appliance. However, it does say within the paper around the limits that we can make in terms of not making a profit from that.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I agree with Mrs. Taylor. I think 3 strikes and you should be out. And I think that what you're charging is far, far too low. I don't know how much their insurance must be for fire and that, but they need to get a grip, don't they? We really need to come down hard on these people. Got better things to be doing. Well, you guys have got better things to be doing than going sorting out a fire alarm.
If I may respond, Chair, yeah, I suppose that initial 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 incident commanders generally have the impact that's required. It's the individuals that don't want to engage that will probably get down to actually we do need to have some stronger enforcement. And I think that's where 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9 come into we've tried to work with you beforehand and now in a more formal capacity. And in this instance, it's still not working. Generally, on the rare occasions that happens, that there's actually a wider package of work that's required at the premises, because if they're not engaging on this bit, there are fractions to the fire safety order that we'll be looking at. But I'll take the point away. I think we can certainly do some work.
And do you also publicise to commercial that they will get charged if they, you know what I mean?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I just wonder whether that is a little bit low, considering the vehicle, time, the team reporting it. I think if we want to get it as a little bit more stricter, if it was nearer £500 or £600 turnout, I think that might start to wake people up a little bit, because clearly that But with the deterrent really is the number, isn't it?
Yeah.
The cost.
You did say, Ben, that obviously there are guidelines as what you can charge.
Yeah, there was certain limitations, and earlier on in item 9, there was paragraph 19 around the additional work that was required for us to understand how we can make financial savings and income generation. So without making the profit on the income generation, 2 bits that were in item 9 were around domestic attendance at automatic fire alarms, but also the crucial one around special service charges. So that review of all of those special service charges that we do will then require that figure to be looked at. So
Wear and tear of the vehicle also.
exactly. So I think that
You know.
weaving that into the special service charges would certainly be an aspect that would.
Do we still see an issue with hoax calls from your people, things like that?
We still do get hoax calls, but not related to sort of the unwanted fire signal sort of premises. They're usually a lot more sort of basic hoax calls.
They are relatively no number given the size of the population. I was pleasantly surprised when reviewing it that we still get them and they're really difficult to deal with, if I'm honest, but they are relatively low number.
Anything further?
Chair, can I just comment? Sure. I'm just going to confirm really what the officer said in relation to the charging arrangements. The legislation provides power to make a charge, but it has to be reasonable, not to make a profit, and it's designed really to be cost recovery.
Okay, so
I ask this supplementary. So it's cost recovery, like if we're attending a false alarm and somebody dies in a fire somewhere else, how can you put a cost on that?
point. But if anybody wants to come back on that, I mean, it's an emotive thing, isn't it? So, yeah.
I think ultimately, yes, the consequences can be incredibly high. One fire engine can only be in one place at one time. And we probably, there might be some further conversations coming as part of the financial pressures around the work we're doing to gain entry for EMAS or the police service. Do we want to continue doing that, or do we want to start charging for that if it's reasonably possible? These are all things we're looking at.
The feeling we're getting, Chief, from the committee today is that we would like to see slightly less instances and charge them to the max what we can.
All received, Chair.
Oh,
Okay, so I move that the report be noted along with the continued activity by LFRS, reducing the fire false alarms, including the potential to charge for attendance of occasions. Can I have a seconder, please? Those in agreement? On to item number 13. The final item today is the agenda of the Equality, Diversion and Inclusion Scheme Review. It's on pages 74 of your agenda pack. And I've got Alana Russo, EDI, the present report.
Thank you, Chair. It's still morning, so I will say good morning to you. For those of you that aren't aware, I know there's some new members on the committee. My name is Helen Russo. I am the EDI lead for the service, and I'm here today to present an updated and refocused Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Scheme, or the EDI scheme. This is a document or a working piece that is already present within the service. So the purpose of today's paper is really to approve the update to that scheme. The assigned appendix gives you all of the detail, and I have also included a link to the current scheme as it stands on the website. In terms of what we've updated and refocused the EDI scheme with is to bring it into a clearer process. So we've used the VMOST process to realign what was already in that scheme, which was very productive and useful in order to guide the EDI activities that we're delivering as a service. But some of the feedback that we've had internally, I've only been in post since January, some of the feedback that we've had since my coming into post is that actually being able to clearly understand how different teams and departments from across the organisation fully embed inclusive practice and achieve the overall ambitions of the organisation. So you will see within the appendix that we have a much more expanded vision and mission, which gives greater clarity on what all of us for the service together and collectively are trying to achieve. And then a redefinition of some of the objectives and strategies that sit within more of the detail level. In the prior scheme, the objectives and strategies were sat at the incorrect level. There was a lot of very granular detail in some of those strategies, which really needed to sit in departmental plans.
and wasn't particularly helpful in really driving forward our objectives across the service. The scheme will hopefully, obviously pending your approval, will look to then provide us with a greater and clearer framework to work across the organisation to ensure that we are being able to create an equitable working environment, have a representative workforce that can better serve the community that sits across Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland. So I have nothing further really to particularly add. I'm more than happy to take any comments, but I would seek your approval of the amendments.
Thank you very much. Do we have any comments on the floor?
Question.
I just have a question. So, yeah. Will we be seeing, because it sort of just stands on its own, doesn't it? So, you know what I mean? It talks about, you know, history and diversity, but I'm not sure what that's going to look like for you. So I'm guessing at some point we'll have that detail coming back so we can see then how you're moving towards it. And
correct. So as I've given some details, sort of paragraph 6 to 9, as it currently stands, due to what was in the previous, we'll call it the previous scheme, and with this being the previous scheme, there was lots of very granular detail in some areas and very sort of blue sky thinking in others, and it wasn't particularly tangible. What that's made very difficult to do then in terms of delivery is to be able to embed what we might refer to as the golden thread. So it's to see, excuse me, to see where teams might then actually connect with some of those objectives and ambitions. And we haven't had a particularly robust method or ability to be able to then report against that, because the actual scheme itself has not existed in a manner that has enabled it to do that. So to answer your question, yes, I hope in the future we will be able to really beef out what it is that we're actually delivering. And if you look at the tactics element that I've included there, that is the business as usual actions, which will really sit within our departmental plans and delivery, and that will be maybe something that we report on the progress of, as opposed to maybe give you the long laundry list of all the things that we will be doing business as usual. But absolutely, we will look to bring that progress back into this.
And I'm guessing we're talking wider than race. I hope we're talking about care experience, young people, neurodivergence, all of that hobbies.
100.
Now, I know in some organisations that information isn't captured. So is it captured in your HR systems already, that sort of wider?
Part of what the scheme will look to achieve is to improve our ability to do that. There are some areas where we do that very well, HR systems being one of them. But as you rightly mentioned, neurodiversity is an area that is becoming better understood, and the support that is required as a result of that is then needing to be better embedded into the systems and processes that we deliver as an organisation. So, as I said, without having a workable structure, we haven't really been able to really supercharge that work. What I will also say is that what the scheme will aim to do is, rather than it sitting very specifically within my role within the HR team or the people team, this will look to really broaden it as how are we as a service pulling forward, and to reaffirm your point, this is about inclusion of all people. This is about representing our community in all areas, and if we have a more diverse and equitable workforce, we are able to provide a better service to the community that we serve. So you're very welcome.
Well, just come back on that. Is there certain instances where a disability, for example, would stop somebody from being an active firefighter?
Of course. So anything that we are talking about within the concept of the scheme is not about reducing the requirements for us to be able to provide a service, particularly when we're speaking operationally. What it is about is ensuring that there is equality and equity and access to those opportunities that we provide. So there are examples where operational firefighters would not be able, maybe because of a disability, maybe because of another fitness, for example, where they may not be able to become an operational firefighter. That doesn't mean that we still shouldn't work to ensure that there are equitable systems for all people, whether they have a disability or not, or have another protected characteristic that means they have equality of access. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Rosita, you're next.
Thank you. Most of my points have been really answered. That leaves me with a very controversial question, and particularly because you said, we're going to beef out what we're delivering. So how do you ensure a balance that the EDI does not override the importance of the duty of a firefighter?
100%. That's a very good question. Thank you. I appreciate that. Everything that we deliver as part of our equality, diversity and inclusion work is complementary. It's not about reducing standards. It's not about us being able to override safety regulation, anything like that. It is imperative that we still deliver a service for our community that ensures that they are safe and that we can continue to deliver our operational duty. Equality, diversity and inclusion law sits supplementary to that. Health and safety regulation will always come above that. This is about us understanding what are our challenges that currently exist within the organisation and how do we consistently and collectively work to address them. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm interested to know how much this costs with volunteers and whatever, who's ever in the team, what sort of budget do you have?
So I have a budget that is allocated, and as Sarah has alluded to in her previous papers, there is a lot of work going on behind the scenes to ensure that we have greater clarity over that budget. I've only come in, just for some context, my post only started in January. I only took on that post. So we have a budget assigned to the work. As I did mention previously, however, this will be looking to better embed the work that we'd like to achieve as part of our business as usual. We're not looking to necessarily increase at the moment, as it stands, expenditure against EDI. We have a budget allocated to those activities. However, if we feel that there is a need to expand that, we will go to the necessary channels to understand what that spend might look like. Sarah, I don't know. There's any other detail you'd like to provide in that regard to finance?
Sarah, just pulling up the budget.
That's fine. Look at the specifics, yeah.
I think it's in the range of £20,000 plus Helena's salary.
Okay.
I'll confirm that for you if that's all right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dowie.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a really good report.
Thank you.
And you explained it really, really well. But two angles from me. One thing you said is that this what I think you said that is that this is the responsibility of everyone. This is not a standalone scheme. But that's very good thinking. And the second bit is that this is not going to be at the expense of the quality of the services we provide. The fundamental is that the quality will stay the same. Yeah? So it is a win-win for everybody. And I support it totally. I think it's a good scheme.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm become qualities champion in the authority, and it's a role that I've had previously, but I haven't been invited to any meetings so far.
Yeah, so we have one next week in October. I believe Judy sent the details to you. If she hasn't, I will send them over to you. My apologies.
One of the things we have to remember is that it's not just about the establishment here, it's about the communities that we serve and representing those communities. And also it's important to acknowledge that from the experience I had previously, that a lot of the work done is by volunteers that work within the service. It's not just the paid person that is the leader there. We have people from other parts of the service who actually volunteer their time to be involved, and they do go out and do things in the community, often as volunteers as well. So there is that good value for money aspect of it, that it gives leverage for other things to happen that wouldn't otherwise.
If I could come in just to give some context. So the group that you've referred to there is what we have titled the EDI steering group. That is a body that is made up of representatives from as many teams, watches included, from different stations, as well as support staff, with the ambition to ensure that it's not just me saying, I think this is a great idea and this is what we should do. It's a collective ambition for the service to be involved with. But then, as you say, that actually where we're able to then identify opportunities for improved delivery and embedding better and inclusive practice, that's something that we can collectively contribute to. So hopefully through a representative, we will be able to keep you updated on some of the progress that we're making, but I am happy to return if you would like me to provide an update.
I just ask very quickly, obviously you raised issues with family life, and that always, comes number one for me as well, for my family as well, whatever else I'm doing. Are you a fostering friendly employer here? Have you taken that on board?
That's a really good question. So it's something that we have actually been looking at through a bit of a tandem. We've been looking at modified duties for staff who are operational, who are pregnant, but are aware that family setups look, whether it's IVF processes, adoption, fostering, whatever that looks like. We do have fostering leave embedded in our additional leave provisions, but I always think there's room for us to improve in that regard. So the benefit of having a working group is that where areas of work are identified, we can engage with staff who might have that lived experience to really build the best, way of working for those groups of people. So I'm sure it is something that in time we will look to review, but we have fostering leave.
Can I just add in what you're saying is I work with the ICB and the ICB has just become fostering friendly, the rubber stamp,
Yeah.
So if there's any way that you'd like to, share best practice, look at their documents, whatever, then do get in contact.
Well, the county council, we're
Just bring the
Friendly.
It's because the numbers are relatively small, I'd have to keep this deliberately vague for I think you'll understand. We do have a number of people that foster on multiple occasions in the organisation, and we are kind of a bit of a niche market sometimes with our shift systems, etc. So we're not fostering friendly rubber stamped yet, but we will listen to every case and flex where we can, notwithstanding some of the points I said earlier around maintaining service delivery, etc. So I'm sorry, that's a very beige answer, but for all the right reasons.
Thank you. If there's nothing further, okay, I move that the revised EDI scheme and its continued delivery within. A second, please. Councillor Barton. Favour? Against? Thank you very much. Okay, on to item number 14. As mentioned earlier with no urgent items. Number 15 is date of next meeting. I'd like to remind everybody, next meeting at 10 a.m. here at SHE. Thank you very much. Have a great afternoon.